Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to talk about the impact of ETF staking on the whole staking landscape in general. As a quick recap, first of all, I've been working in this space on Dune Analytics for over 3 years now. In 2022, COVID happened, and I went full autistic on Dune and made a bunch of charts. And yeah, I don't know. That's how I started on here, pseudonymously with this little face that's a dying NFT, very, very dead now, and my pseudonym, Hildobby. And I started at a time when I was quite surprised because the beacon chain had gone live, but there was no data to be found really on how it was performing. I thought it could be quite important for Ethereum, and I guess the interest really popped up after withdrawals went live. But the reason this event is also really important to me is because in 2022, when I launched this dashboard, there's 2 teams that reached out to me and wanted to give me grants. I was part of a quarter-check funding round from EthStaker, and Lido also gave me a grant at the time. And I'm not sure I would be here without these early sources of revenue. I'm doing great. I'm at Dragonfly since 3 years ago. Don't worry about it. But yeah, that was a quick origin story on how I got here and why I do what I do. I've been trying to tag entities staking. Now, it's a bit of a gray area in terms of like doxing, what's okay to dox, what's not okay. I'm in the camp of it's okay to dox custodians who hold customers' money because it's also proof of funds and stuff like this. I'm also okay with doxing very, very large stakers, but I don't believe in doxing solo stakers. That's not really what I'm after at all. And so far I've staked about 75%. It fluctuates over time, and it's also harder and harder to keep on tagging entities and seeing who's actually controlling who's actually securing the Ethereum protocol. But what you do see here is that I have Coinbase tagged at 6.4%. It's actually much higher now because they're harder to track. I used to be able to track them quite well, but now they're all over the place. The reason I'm talking about Coinbase is because it's also the custodian for many of the ETFs, and therefore will come back being relevant here. Another thing, before talking about another thing, my tags have also been available on Beacon Chain, so if you see tags on there, feel free to give feedback if you think they're wrong, if things should be changed, whatever. Obviously, it's not a perfect data set. I'm trying to keep it as maintained as possible. But yeah, and if you want to remove tags as well, that's also completely fine. Please reach out. I have no problem with that. I've also been tracking ETFs. Now, you've seen many providers tracking reported flows, but I don't actually want to look at that. What I'm doing is looking on-chain and tracking the individual addresses and actually tracking what are the flows in and out of those addresses. Now, it's not easy because custodians aren't necessarily willing to give out those addresses, so there's quite a bit of sleuthing involved. But I consider that work kind of fun, I guess. And yeah, the reason I do it is, I guess, a little bit for fun, but also because I believe that when ETF launched, they would naturally eventually have staking and more involved, and on-chain tracking would make this, a clearer macro picture of what's going on rather than just looking at reported flows. So that's why I did all that. So yeah, I've got listed tags. I've got more than 10,000 addresses for all the ETFs that I'm tracking and keep on adding. You can query them. They're also useful for all kinds of on-chain analytics and other purposes. If you want to see, who's holding part of the supply of Bitcoin or Ethereum, those are large players and therefore worth looking into. But anyways, I digress. We're talking about ETF staking. Recently, Grayscale announced that they haven't been allowed to stake their ETFs, and that was on October 6th. And they went right ahead on the same day and started to stake, and they've been staking quite a bit of their ETH. That is across Grayscale, so that would be their product ETH-E, and Grayscale Mini, which is the ticker ETH. It's a little confusing because it's the same as ETH, I guess, but whatever. And then 21 Shares also has staked a bunch. Now you can actually see that when they're staked on the validator queue, because it calls the 20-day increase in terms of queue time. So yeah, they're large ETH holders, so I guess to be expected. But this impact is going to be relevant going forward because they're not the only ETF issuer. They're not even the largest. We got BlackRock eventually coming at some point and probably going to have even a higher impact on the whole staking landscape. Now, ETFs have redemption requirements, so they need to keep some ETH on hand. You can't just take everything. Obviously, there's outflows into ETFs, and those are regulated products, and therefore some need to be kept. Looking at their current stats, they're basically staking about 70% of their assets. That's the initial amount they sent on October 6th till 8th, which is still actually, no, sorry, it's not in the queue anymore. It should be staked now. But anyways, it took a while. 70% is staked. And I actually looked at that percentage and wanted to extrapolate to all the other issuers and seeing what would be the impact were the others to do the same. I'm not actually, I've never really worked for the ACC or anything, so I don't know if 70% is the right percentage and will apply to others. I don't know if there'll be more degen issuers or less degen issuers. Not sure, but let's just take it as is and say that it applies to the rest as a ballpark measurement. So here you have the current ETF holdings for each of the issuers. Only looking at the US for now, because that's usually what people focus on. It's the most relevant ETF issuers. Multiplying about 70% to get, if they followed in Grayscale footsteps, what would they stake? Now you can see the impact on the deposit queue, so about 76 days. That would apply. I think obviously the largest is going to be BlackRock with the bulk of that weight, as well the bulk of that percentage. But you can see as well it trickles down to the rest. What is important that I mentioned before is that a lot of these are under Coinbase's custody. And like I mentioned before, Coinbase is currently already quite a large owner of staked ETH. In fact, it is the largest single entity. And of course, like I said, they're really, really hard to track. I've been trying to keep tagging them, estimating, but yeah, they're not publishing it. They're not really showcasing that. There's an article that came out recently that said that they have about 11.4% of ETH staked, and there's a bunch more as well that is parked at partnering protocols. But if you look back on this, there's about 9.5% that would be staked with Coinbase, which I consider quite large. And back when we knew that they had like 50% and up, there was quite a bit of concern on in general about we don't ever want someone to control too high of a stake. They have seen reduced it, but adding that 9% on top would actually bring them back way over where they were when we were raid in the first place. So yeah, just something FYI I think is interesting to watch out for. I love Coinbase, by the way. No beef against them. Just want to hold them accountable on this. I have a Coinbase account. Great user experience. Now, there's other ETF issuers who have announced their staking. VanEck, which is much smaller, I believe it's 0.1% of would-be staked ETH whether to stake, have gone for different routes. They've gone for Lido. Yeah, I think that's great. Lido is cool, and I understand when you're controlling a smaller portion, it's maybe easier to outsource it, keep it liquid, and I'm guessing they may face redemption. Given the smaller amount, they may face redemption limits that would require them to have a Lido liquid product rather than an ETF, much like Grayscale and BlackRock can have on their own side. But there's also in the institutional side, you also have decentralized asset treasuries, which have grown quite a bit lately, and my assumption is that we'll probably see a similar-ish evolution to the ETFs. They can already do essentially whatever they want, but I do assume that quite a bit of this will probably end up being staked at some point. And it's over 4% of the supply, which is quite a bit. And that would equal to whether to stake 70% of all this, about 12 to 5% of all staked ETH. So in total, that would bring around 20% of institutional ETH being, sorry, lost my word, securing the network. And I'm sure it only goes up from here as well. Yeah, so that's, I guess, contextualizing, you know, how much will be institutionalized in the staking landscape. I was really curious because, I don't know, like we've been talking about this for so long. What, you know, is ETH has always been at core about like the solo staker ethos and all this, but big players are coming to town, and yeah, I thought we might as well look into the numbers. And also, there's a follow-up discussion on ETFs in general with Anthony Chisano, Hong, who are going to discuss and talk about these potential, the impact of those things. Yeah, with that, thank you very much. I work on a lot of data. This is the staking area, but you might have seen me in many other areas. I've done blobs, I've done ETFs, I've done central exchanges. Tomorrow I'm presenting my biggest project so far, which is Interop, made the biggest data set on Dune so far. So if you're at DuneCon, you're welcome to show up and see me talk about that. Thank you.
We do have plenty of time for questions. Are there any questions in the audience here?
Yeah, just with Coinbase disclosing the amount of stake they had, I thought this was going to be an ongoing basis. Was I incorrect to assume that?
They used to disclose it in their quarterly reportings, and I've been trying to sleuth through those and understand, because it's not clearly stated we stake this amount. I've been working with Stakehouse quite a bit on this, but it's somehow less clear on every reporting, and it's no longer in there as of 2 years ago now. Yeah, so I've been tweeting in the void.
Okay, we need to find Ben and tell him to get it sorted.
Yeah,
thank you.
That would be great. They have been disclosing CB BTC, and my assumption would be that eventually it would be the same for CB ETH, but that just never happened. And the answer I've gotten is essentially is just too scattered around many Coinbase teams, and they can't get it sorted themselves. But that's a weak answer.
Just a follow-up question to that: is there some standard or some type of published data that you would like to see institutions produce in their quarterly reports or disclosures that would help maybe form a standard for on-chain clarity and transparency?
So for ETF issuers, I originally wanted them to hopefully to publish their addresses. Bitwise was the only one to do that at first. Unfortunately, their client saw this as a concern, and were actually, you know, it was pushing them away from using the product. So Bitwise retracted from that and no longer publishes those. So I understand it from, like, it's not their fault, it's just the client's perspective. I'll keep tagging them and pushing their addresses. There's also the other concern for them, which is dusting attacks, because they have to report anything they hold, and you know, that's just annoying regulatory work, because that's of course ETH on ETFs, but also any other assets on the ETH blockchain. For Bitcoin, it's even ordinals that they had to report. It's just, yeah, it's a mess. So I understand it from the perspective. If there's something we can work out, I would love to. I'm just not sure they have enough interest for that for them to go through with this.
Okay, question right here.
Since, let's see here, Coinbase is securing all of this crypto for all of these companies.
Yeah.
And let's say BlackRock wants to start staking. Is BlackRock going to take their crypto back and then stake, or is Coinbase going to stake for them?
No, it's Coinbase custody that stakes it for them. That's what happened with Grayscale.
Okay.
And 21 shares.
So is that going to show up on Coinbase's portion as they're going to be quite a bit more, and BlackRock's not going to show up?
In theory, yes. You mean on my dashboards? Yes, it will. That's my goal, is to tag them eventually there. I haven't done it yet because there's a bunch of data work that I need to do in terms of code. But yeah, but it's they're scrambling their stake across many different things. So having the actual total is very, very hard now. Yeah, they keep on changing their custody models, like unstaking and restaking in different ways, and it's just, yeah, they're obviously pretty good at hiding on chain.
All right, one last question here in the back.
Thank you. Yeah, I have heard that actually Coinbase stake their funds with multiple node operators. I was wondering whether you have information or have you looked into that?
Oh wait, yeah. Well, on one of the slides, there's in their reporting from February, they said that they have like 500,000 ETH held in by other protocols, but they don't actually detail which. I don't know. I'm guessing Kiln and stuff like this is going to be those. I don't actually know. They're not very clear on that either.
All right. Well, once again, a round of applause for Hildobby here and his work.
Thank you.